Hello and welcome to my tour of noticing through Ulysses Aldrovand's Historia Monstrorum. In this video, I hope to point out several different things I found of interest, as well as my favorite monster that I've discovered. I believe that my findings help drive home what history really is, which is to say, stories from other people. In the early pages of the Monstrorum, I noticed several monsters that weren't actually monsters at all. Page 9 features a drawing of a figure with a black pendulous lower lip. Just the translation. This illustration could perfectly resemble someone with a lip spacing, something very common in different African tribes, such as the Mercy tribe. Furthermore, pages 16, 17, and 18 feature men and women of different ages to be covered in hair. This very accurate illustration resembles a real-life condition known as hypertrichosis. One thing I'd like to point out is though, even though these people are suffering from a mutation, which makes their hair grow, and they're deemed as monsters, quote unquote, they wear extravagant clothing, so they are obviously members of a developed society. This transitions into something I noticed big time, clothing. Many of the monsters shown in the book do not wear any clothes, such as satyrs and centaurs. However, certain monsters do. Some examples are seen here on pages 11, 13, 16, 17, 28, 40, just to name a few. Why do these monsters wear clothing, but others do not? What does a sea monster need clothes for? The monster in the middle's garb clearly resembles scales. It is undoubtedly some sort of tunic or robe, or even a gambeson or armor. Are these monsters living in societies where clothing is a norm rather than living in the untamed wilds? Answers to these questions elude me, obviously, but I'd love to know why those behind these illustrations decided to give them such clothes and their design. Another thing that piqued my interest was page 36, the title of Icon Mularis Selentitis. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but it depicts a woman seemingly birthing giants. Now, Selentitis roughly relates to of silence. However, in the book, Selentitis is spelt with an extra E and the S is capitalized. This made me think it was a name, and that excited me. I had the preconception that the monsters shown in the book were assumed to be just full species, like dog, cat, moose. But the fact that it could be an actual character or figure, similar to how we think of Dracula, was very exciting. I caved in and I went to Google to find that Selene is a Titan goddess of the moon. This surprised me even further. I assumed that while acknowledging that these monsters are totally fictional, these monsters were often seen as real at the time. Considering that this book came from the scientific revolution and it sought to categorize and order everything about the known world, I figured that mythology would not be present in the book. Of course, it makes sense, though, because this history is based off of stories, off of things that we know is not true, but might seem such back then. This transitions nicely into something else I noticed. While flipping through the pages of the Monstrum, I noticed that on pages 120 to 122, I saw what looked to be a lengthy poem, something I was also not expecting to see in a, at the time, scientific book. This is also seen in page 184. Just before these italics starts, the translation reads, Avidius sings. Obviously, I was hooked. Who was this Avidius person? After succumbing and going to Google again, I discovered a man by the name of Avidius Naso, or Ovid the poet. Ovid was responsible for writing Metamorphoses, a collection of mythological stories as seen at the top of the page. It's interesting to see that Aldrovandi references other writings in the book. Specifically, the poems seem to be broken up into chunks, followed by what could be explanations or disagreements. This really goes to show how this history is taken as hard fact in the book at the time is based off of, fictional stories and poems based on mythology and gods and goddesses, which was very interesting to me. But now the moment you've been patiently waiting for, my favorite monster. The translation of this monster reads, a monster with the head of a vulture, a dragon, and an eagle, which I believe is very aptly named. What's interesting to me is that the right arm is human, whereas although it's a vaguely humanoid shape, it's the only thing that remains 100% human. What's very interesting to me is there appears to be a small gash or wound on the right hand. I don't know if this is deliberate or just a mistake or a marking in the printing, but it intrigues me to say that maybe it was wounded or it hurt itself with a beak or sorts. And I find that that's a very interesting detail that doesn't seem necessary. It's also covered in scales and it has the talons of an eagle on its left arm. And it has two sets of feet, one vaguely human and one talon and almost a flipper. This unfortunately concludes my presentation. There was so much more I wanted to include, but unfortunately I could not. I very much hope you've enjoyed. Thank you.